What's up guys, Stan here, and I'm sure many of you out there are wondering why a Smash review instead of Gen 7? It's a fair question for sure, but I don't know, after I beat both Generation 6 games this summer, I needed a break in genre, and for whatever reason, as we get closer to the holidays, I've been really loving Ultimate again. Actually, it's not just Ultimate. The first video game I ever owned was Super Smash Bros. On the N64, and the first review I ever did on this channel was Smash Wii U. So when it comes to this fighting franchise, there's a lot of history for me to cover, and a lot of memories I want to talk about. But I'll get more into that in the actual video. So grab your Monado and let's dive into the holy land of gaming. But first, a word from our sponsor. Guys, I don't know about you, but I love collecting stuff. Whether it was Pokemon cards back in the day, or special edition gaming consoles now, I'm always on the hunt for the rarest and best characters and items to add to my growing collection. So imagine how thrilled I was when I found out that Raid Shadow Legends not only has years of content to unlock and discover, but it also scratches that same collector's itch with nearly 500 champions to unlock and upgrade. You see these? These are shards, and they're used to summon champions, with characters ranking from common all the way up to legendary. Alright, so first up we got Sakurai, an epic class support champion who's crazy versatile in the campaign thanks to her magic affinity and her aura puncture, which hits enemies 3 times in a row. Okay, we also summoned War Priest, who's actually pretty strong, but sadly I already unlocked her a while back. But no worries, because that just means we can use her as food to power up a stronger champion, because when it comes to Raid Shadow Legends, there are no bad summons. And finally we've got Fane, who... Okay, I'll be honest here, this champion scares the ever-loving heck out of me because I am deathly afraid of rats. But you know what? She's going to put the fear into my enemies as well. Because in the Classic Arena, my favorite area in the game, she turned out to be an absolute god. Raid's constantly bringing out new champions, and here's some concept art for some of the ones they're currently working on. Look at the polish on these guys. You really don't see this level of detail in a mobile game. Personally, I really like the look of this evil dwarf guy. I mean, what's that Blade Runner looking thing on his back? So what are you waiting for? Make sure you're quick, as every new player using my link in the description will get you an exclusive welcome pack that contains 100,000 silver, 1 energy refill, 10 mystery shards, and a free champion, Slasher. Look at this champion they're giving you for free. Anyways, you can find your extra rewards here in your inbox for the next 30 days only. So if you've ever been curious about the game and you want to help out the channel, please hit that link in the description below. And without further ado, let's jump into the video. The games! Assuming directing duties once again, legendary game designer Masahiro Sakurai had little time to assemble a brand new team, and so after finishing up the remaining DLC for Smash 4, most of Sora and Namco Bandai immediately began production on the new title under Sakurai's steady hand. Tragically, before development began, Satoru Iwata, Nintendo's revered president, passed away in the summer of 2015. And whether it was due to his close personal relationship with the director, or his past experience working on the franchise itself, according to Sakurai, Iwata's final request was for him to create a brand new Super Smash Bros. Game for the Nintendo Switch. And so, out of respect for his mentor's final wishes, a tired Sakurai took on the project, and vowed to make it the best possible game that he could. Utilizing a pre-existing engine, this installment would retain many of its predecessor's elements while being rebalanced for a speedier, more action-oriented form of gameplay. It also, much to Nintendo's legal team's dismay, would feature every single character ever included in the series roster. This of course meant lots of internal headaches and rights issues. However, Sakurai was dead set on making his friend proud, and ensured that every character would get an invitation this time around. Nowadays, I think us fans may take this ambitious gamble for granted, but it can't be overstated how difficult this must have been to pull off, and how monumental this roster truly was in terms of historical significance. I mean, not only were gaming titans like Ryu, Mega Man, and Cloud Strife returning for this ultimate battle, but Snake, the very first third-party character ever introduced in the series, was going to be playable once again, along with every other character who'd been previously shelved for one reason or another. And that's without even discussing the new additions entering the fray. Because with each new trailer, fans were treated to nothing less than gaming history being rewritten on the spot, as long-desired fighters such as Simon Belmont, King K. Rool, and even Ridley were finally made playable characters alongside many other industry icons. And finally, after months of waiting and feverish fan anticipation, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate hit store shelves worldwide on December 7th, 2018 to universal acclaim. The game was faster than its predecessors, offered much more content, and using the Switch's patented technology could be played on the go with little to no effects on gameplay. It was, to put it lightly, a success beyond anything that Sakurai or Iwata could have imagined, and along with near-perfect review scores, would go on to sell upwards of 20 million units and become not only the best-selling Smash title of all time, but also the best-selling fighting game in history. And its success wouldn't stop there. Through DLC, Sakurai continued to push the limits of what a crossover game could look like, and not only added celebrated characters such as Joker from Persona 5 and Banjo-Kazooie, but also put assets from beloved indie titles like Cuphead and Undertale into Ultimate in order to really sell the message of everyone is here without having to program over 100 characters into the game. And yet, even that wasn't enough for the masterful director, as upon completion of the game's first wave of DLC, and thanks to its record-breaking sales, Sakurai and his team opted to include one more round of downloadable content in order to reach some truly ridiculous benchmarks that he himself has admitted will never be topped again by Smash Bros. Or any other series. Personally, I feel like its subtitle summarizes the experience perfectly, and in my opinion, Ultimate managed to finally do what no game in the series had been capable of up until that point, and that was to create a version of Smash that could be appreciated by every type of player. It has enough depth, skill, and various competitive-minded modes that keep hardcore players on their toes, while still being a masterclass in local multiplayer combat. There's been no game in the past decade that has gotten me and my friends together in a living room as much as Ultimate, and the memories we've made and the fun nights we've shared together are priceless to me. It's practically become a religious experience for many within not only our small town circle, but I assume millions of players across the world, and despite not being perfect, and trust me, despite all this praise, it does still have its flaws, I've wanted to take a deep dive and share my thoughts on this game ever since it launched. And so before I gush any longer, ladies, gentlemen, and others, choose your main and leave your trophies at the door, because this is my in-depth review of Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. The story. As a fighting game, the truth is when it comes to narrative, Ultimate doesn't exactly care about crafting complex emotional beats or deep character development, and honestly, that's okay. Each installment in the series has taken some sort of stab at single-player gameplay that will enrich the player's experience, and as far as fighting games go, Smash does a perfectly reasonable job of accomplishing this. And this time around, we're given World of Light. Unlike many of Smash's earlier titles, you won't find any dolls or trophies here, but rather spirits, each of them representing a popular character or element from gaming history. However, when we enter this mode for the first time, it appears that the Smash universe is under attack from a villainous entity known as Galeem, who's hell-bent on vaporizing everything and everyone in its warpath. Eventually, this leads to a final stand from the game's main fighters, who are unsuccessful in their attacks and end up being wiped out by the monstrous entity, with their empty husks being used as vessels for many of the spirits under Galeem's control. Luckily though, Kirby, using his trusty Warp Star, was able to escape its wrath, and now finding himself in a desolate land overrun with evil spirits, it's up to the Pink Puffball to rescue the fighters and save the world before Galeem consumes everything. And yeah, that's pretty much what we get in terms of plot. There's some beautiful and even sometimes hilarious cutscenes used to demonstrate how each fighter would retreat in a crisis. And I think it's great that Sakurai had no shame in making Kirby the gaming universe's greatest hero again. This is a guy who originally didn't want to put Meta Knight or King Dedede in Melee due to his own personal biases, so it's great to see him just own his genius here and let the character he created serve as the player's initial avatar. Of course, as you continue through the World of Light and battle Galeem's spirit army, you'll eventually be able to defeat and unlock more fighters to use throughout your adventure if Kirby's not your style. Personally, I feel like this campaign is the perfect marriage of Brawl's Subspace Emissary and Wii U's version of Event Mode, and despite not having as much plot or dazzling cutscenes as the former, the level of creativity displayed here outclasses any single-player experience we've gotten so far from the series. There are some spirits, like Metal Sonic for example, that are pretty obvious in how they should be brought to life. You take Sonic as a base fighter, slap a metal coat on him, and the message comes across loud and clear. However, there are others like King Garon from Fire Emblem Fates that were done justice in a much less obvious way, but if you played that game, his spirit makes perfect sense to the player. And personally, I think that's where a lot of the fun from this mode is derived. It's one giant love letter to the world of video games, and the more that you've played, the more rewarding this sort of experience becomes. For example, one of my favorite series in all of gaming is Donkey Kong Country, so imagine my surprise and delight when I went through a portal in World of Light and found myself in a near identical recreation of the first area from that franchise. Smash has always been the biggest crossover series in gaming, but it's here in Ultimate that it finally feels like it's making use of all the assets and history only it can amass. And the result is a straight shot of nostalgia that will keep players interested despite the admittedly derivative gameplay that the campaign offers. And it's not just references to the main fighters that show up either, as you continue on and eventually run into spirits for popular third-party games like Rayman, Bomberman, Shantae, heck, even Shovel Knight shows up in one of the shops. Now, to some players, this revelation might seem like a slap in the face. After all, characters like Shantae and Rayman have been requested as playable fighters for years now. But to me, I think it's the perfect compromise, and it lets fans know that the developers are listening, even if certain icons may not have the right elements at this time to receive a proper spot on the roster. But eventually, as you make your way through countless hours of brilliant homages, and participate in who knows how many spirit battles and shocking clashes with characters you'd never see coming, like this one with Rathalos from Monster Hunter, you'll eventually come face to face with Galeem, the game's final boss. Except your adventure's not done yet. In fact, it's not even close. Because with this being of light down for the count, it allows for its equally destructive parallel, Dark Khan, to break through dimensions and plunge this world of light into unrivaled darkness. And now it's up to you to take on the next set of tasks in this equally challenging wonderland, all the while continuing to battle Dark Khan's spirits of darkness and visit some incredibly iconic settings. And seriously, I don't want to spoil this area for those who haven't played the game or gotten this far yet, but man oh man are these particular sequences amazing. Like, just the attention to detail in some aspects are absolute treats for those with deep video game knowledge. And at one point, there's an entire section that's essentially just one giant quiz on Nintendo itself. Also, it's gotta be said that the boss battles throughout the World of Light are absolutely brilliant, and when I first encountered Ganon, the Ocarina of Time fanboy in me absolutely lost it. I mean, despite the difference in genre, there's actual strategy involved pulled right out of that game's final boss battle, and once again, the attention to detail here blows my mind. The Dark World is always the best part of the campaign for me, and thankfully it's way less populated than the Light Dimension, which means after beating Ganon, along with a few other nefarious beings of equal renown, you'll be ready to take on Dark Khan, the game's final boss. Wait, no, seriously? Okay, so apparently both Galeem and Dark Khan still aren't done with the whole apocalypse thing, and now with both of them weakened, they're having a petty deathmatch to determine whether light or darkness should reign supreme. Seriously, just get a dimension, guys. And so it's up to you to find balance among the remaining light and dark spirits, and take the fight to both deities in order to put an end to their nonsense once and for all. And with Galeem and Dark Khan finally defeated, the Smash Bros. World is a place of prosperity once again, as we see the planet finally freed from their evil influence once and for all. And that, my friends, is Ultimate's World of Light, and for the most part, it gets the job done. I mean, look, if you want the definitive single-player Smash experience, you're probably still better off playing through Brawl's Subspace Emissary, as its narrative is infinitely more complex than what we get here. And yeah, it's still super weird how Sakurai refuses to get over the cutscenes leaking onto YouTube thing from over a decade ago, which has resulted in nothing quite that ambitious taking place again. But as I've said previously, if you go into World of Light with tempered expectations and ready for some repetition, then it should be just interesting enough to keep your attention and maybe surprise you along the way. That being said though, along with the aforementioned tediousness this mode provides, it also has a few other noticeable shortcomings that are sure to turn more inexperienced players off, and the most glaring of these flaws is in how overwhelming it can seem. See, along with all of the spirits and fighters to defeat, there's also tons of shops, training facilities, exploration areas, and in-game obstacles to overcome that, while fun as fan service and meant to create a more RPG-like campaign, can give the player a bit of sensory overload, as it's all sort of just piled on with little to no explanation. Seriously, I don't understand why it was necessary to have 5 different shops and all of these random dojos in order to pad out the adventure, especially when, once unlocked, you can just access them from the menu anyways. It just comes off as redundant, and that's without even getting into how spirits actually work, or that they implemented a rock, paper, scissors formula for them. That's right, Sakurai's love of Fire Emblem doesn't stop with just the music and DLC characters, as each spirit is part of a similar weapons triangle found in that turn-based franchise, with certain types of spirits being strong, weak, or neutral against other classes depending on their category. Which means even if you unlock and equip an ultra-powerful 4-star spirit, it won't be worth much unless it has a type advantage over your opponent and has its levels maxed out. Oh yeah, and that reminds me, there's a leveling system too, as each victory nets the player an assigned amount of both snacks, which can be used to level up spirits and sometimes even upgrade them into stronger versions of themselves, as well as combat points, which are used for pretty much everything. You need them to buy items in the shop, for the aforementioned leveling system, to summon spirits using less powerful character cores, and even when I went out of my way to 100% the game, I was still always in need of more of this annoying currency to participate in the deeper RPG-like elements of the campaign. And look, I get it. Creativity can only take you so far when it comes to designing hundreds of similarly themed battles that players will tackle again and again as they continue their progress. There's only so many elements in the game that can be transformed into something unique or nostalgic, but it just feels like a lot of unnecessary bloat for what is otherwise an all too straightforward adventure, even if I personally get a kick out of some of the spirit upgrades and summons. And finally, though this last flaw is more of a subjective annoyance than an actual detriment, I don't understand Sakurai's need to shy away from his own lore, especially in a campaign that only flourishes because of its deep nostalgic roots. At this point, Smash is over 20 years old, and whether he wants to admit it or not, the games he's made stand among other great Nintendo franchises like Metroid and Pokemon. And yet, every time this man creates a new entry, it feels like he's ready to throw away everything that came before in order to make something fresh, at least from a narrative perspective. Which, I mean, on one hand is admirable. Sakurai is clearly a perfectionist, and it shows time and time again in his work, even outside of this particular series. But at the same time, we went from Adventure Mode in Melee, to Subspace in Brawl, then Smash Run and Smash Tour last generation, and now we have World of Light. And the issue isn't so much that single player changes frequently, but that it hardly, if ever, retains any thematic throughline or connections to its past, whether it be in terms of structure, settings, or even its own characters. Sure, both Master and Crazy Hands show up here, and getting to play as the former is a perfect way to reward players after a monotonous slog of countless battles. But what about Taboo? A final boss so powerful he controlled both hands and organized the entire in-game conflict of Brawl's Adventure Mode. And yet, despite all of the fan service here, he's relegated to just another spirit, while Darkon and Galeem pull the strings, two characters nobody know or care about. Look, I'm not saying Taboo or Master Core needed to be the true mastermind here or anything, because, again, plot-wise, this is all pretty shallow stuff. But I can't help but wish that Sakurai would stop feverishly resetting and instead utilize some of his past creations to help players actually create long-lasting bonds with these bosses and worlds instead of throwing them away after each use. Because, like many of the franchises he adores and pays respect to in this very story, Smash now has its own valuable legacy worth building upon and embracing. But aside from those areas and a few aspects I'll touch upon later, World of Light is a mostly harmless single-player adventure that I do think is worth your time at least once, and especially so if you have a deep history with gaming. And so with that flawed but fulfilling story covered, I think now is a great time to spot dodge into everything else that Ultimate does right as we Falcon kick our way into the pros. The pros! It's crazy now to think back to after the initial reveal trailer that there was a debate amongst the community on whether or not Ultimate would be a brand new title or simply an enhanced version of Smash Bros. Wii U. At that time, ports like Mario Kart DX and Bayonetta were all the rage, so when E3 rolled around and Nintendo revealed that Ultimate would in fact be a brand new experience, many fans were finally able to let themselves be excited. And honestly, they had every reason to be excited, as Ultimate ended up taking what worked about its predecessor's combat and somehow made it feel even more intuitive. And the speed. I was actually fortunate enough to attend a special Nintendo event back in August of 2018 to test the game early. The first thing I immediately noticed was how, though the engine wasn't quite as slippery and exploitable as Melee's, it felt noticeably faster than Smash 4's. Kills came quick, dodging felt more responsive, and overall I got the sense that this was a more offensively minded game than its past two predecessors. And given the explosive final KO animation and the addition of decimal points on the end of your HP bar, the emphasis on fast-paced action seems to have been more deliberate this time around. Of course, you can still play defensively if you want. That's the beauty of Smash in all of its incarnations. But whether you're a fan of itemless 1v1s, Team Smash with only Pokeballs, or take part in one of those 8-player Royal Rumbles on a massive stage, the gameplay is always exciting, especially while playing locally with friends. And the variety doesn't stop in gameplay, as the wealth of both single and multiplayer modes adds some additional content to keep players satisfied out of World of Light and the main areas of battle. There's a dedicated classic mode for all 80+ combatants that changes based on their character and spans a multitude of difficulties that only gets more difficult as you succeed. Then of course you still have many staples including training mode, mob smashes like 100-man, all-star, and cruel smash. The home run contest was added in an update shortly after the game's launch, and hey, even the stage builder makes a return, and it's not for me. But I'm thrilled it's here regardless, and I'm sure there are those that enjoy it. There's also the return of Mii's and all of the customization that goes along with them, including some seriously radical DLC options. I mean, only $1 for a Sans costume and Megalovania in Smash? Yes, please. And speaking of phenomenal compositions, as is tradition, you can unlock a plethora of music for the vault that can be used on certain stages at your discretion, as well as compiled into playlists for your listening enjoyment. And I mean, yeah, this is the greatest video game soundtrack ever assembled onto one piece of software, hands down. Having assets from every era of gaming has paid off huge here, as there's everything from classic anthems to slick remixes of some of the best and most obscure arrangements found in gaming's Hall of Fame. And adding iconic musical libraries from franchises like Persona and Castlevania have only improved upon Smash 4's momentous offering, with many legendary composers adding their own symphonic touches to this collaborative audio experience. Even Lifelight, Ultimate's main theme, has dethroned Uematsu's operatic main theme from Brawl as the definitive Smash song in my mind. Which I didn't think would ever happen, but I guess that's what you get when you include it in so many important trailers and moments in the game. Moving on to another portion of the vault now, there are 124 challenges to complete if you're looking to 100% this game, and for the first time ever in Smash, I was able to do just that. In general, I found that compared to previous incarnations, this installment was a lot more lax when it came to how difficult these challenges were. And in most cases, if you're struggling with any one in particular, there's almost always an easy way to cheese it, so you can unlock that special spirit or Mii costume you've been dying to equip. And when it comes to spirits, there are, and no, I'm not kidding, over 1,400 currently available to collect in this game. And that number is only going to grow as more DLC characters are revealed and additional Nintendo games are released. In fact, there are so many spirits to gather that I straight up forgot that I'd unlocked Resident Evil characters like Leon and Wesker until I was recording footage for this review, which I think speaks to the volume of content found within Ultimate. No, they're not trophies, and I absolutely wish that there was some form of flavor text for each spirit, something even Smash 64 did with no issues back in the day. But I get it. Trophies require a ridiculous amount of modeling and rendering, and this way we get to see even more faces we love, even if it's admittedly not as satisfying. There's even a neat feature where you can unlock multiple spirits using the spirit board, although unless you're trying to be a completionist, you're probably better off waiting until they show up in the game's main shop, or just get them through World of Light like I did. But moving on to the final and most blatant feature that makes this game truly ultimate, this is a fighting game roster that Sakurai himself has said will never be topped again, and he's probably right. I talked a lot about the sheer variety of fighters in the opening, especially those added via DLC. But it's nothing short of a miracle that this many characters are featured in one game. By my estimation, there are 15 third-party representatives alone. And if you would have told 10-year-old Stan that one day he could play a non-Flash version of Smash with every major member of Captain N and the Game Master, I wouldn't have believed you. I mean, why would I? Remember, Brawl only had 2 third-party characters, and one of them might as well have been a Nintendo mascot at that point in time. Yeah, sorry Sega fans, but those were some rough years, come on. So to go from that to this after only 2 generations, with the possibility of more yet to come, is mind-boggling. I've been a Sheik main ever since Melee, but this game's roster was so deep and so enticing that I had no choice but to try some different characters. And after tons of trial and error, I somehow ended up as a Joker main, who through this game went back and played Persona 5 so that I could better understand that character and his influence. That's the type of power a franchise like Smash has, and it's all because of this feature that it's become a virtual dining hall that every developer desperately wants their character to eat at. How else can you explain Microsoft just lending a direct competitor one of its star characters with little incentive or reward for themselves, other than the possible exposure and good PR a decision like this will garner? It's because Smash brings everyone together through its combat, through its inclusivity, and through this legendary roster. And in my opinion, Ultimate does the absolute best job at all 3 of these things in a series that constantly delivers above and beyond its expectations. But despite all of these exceptional elements that have kept myself and many others coming back time and time again, are there any lackluster features or baffling omissions that plague this masterpiece of a fighting game? Well, sadly, it wouldn't be a Nintendo exclusive if there weren't a few missteps here and there. So grab your Buster Sword and make sure you have an Ethernet cable on hand as we take a look at Ultimate's cons. The cons! Let's start with the most obvious disappointment in not just Smash, but most of Nintendo's modern multiplayer offerings, as we discuss the often horrendous and almost always disappointing online mode. I mean, it's serviceable, sure, but at this point it's ridiculous that while charging a membership fee, Nintendo doesn't come close to providing players with a serviceable product here. As usual, there's no voice chat unless you use a third-party app. But honestly, thanks to stuff like Discord and Skype, that's not as much of a pain point as it once was. And overall, Ultimate's online experience is vastly improved over what we got in Smash 4, it's just unfortunate that that's not really saying much at all. To be honest, I really don't want to get into this aspect too much because not only will I just come off as Nintendo bashing, but also likely redundant, as this is sadly par for the course when it comes to a modern Smash Bros game. It's absolutely infuriating that despite setting competitive parameters, you can just find yourself up against a laggy Link who's turned on hammers and set the time limit to 3 minutes in one stock. And it's hilarious how many of the game's top players are required to have 2 tier lists encompassing both online and offline matches in order to gauge which characters are worth their time and effort to learn. Look, I'm no fighting game god, and I couldn't even get myself back into Elite Smash, which is meant to be Ultimate's specialized online mode, in time for this video to go out, so please feel free to completely ignore my opinions on this matter, as it's admittedly not in my area of expertise. But most of the time, setting up a lobby with friends is frustrating, and playing strangers is like pulling teeth, because even if you have perfect internet and a cabled connection, you're not guaranteed that your opponents will show you the same courtesy. All that being said, I've still absolutely put dozens of hours into this mode, and I've honestly had some truly excellent online matches. It's just a shame that after so many attempts, Nintendo still refuses to build a dedicated online service for one of their few AAA franchises that would heavily benefit from it. And I mean, it's not like Sakurai is not trying. There's the return of spectator mode, where you can gamble on other people's matches, an online tournament, sometimes with a specific theme, and as mentioned earlier, Elite Smash, which creates a virtual carrot to keep players of my skill level aiming higher. But I'm sorry, it's not enough. And this is one area I have to concede the critics absolutely got right in their initial reviews. However, as far as major turnoffs go, it's basically only online and the tedious elements found in World of Light that can make the game feel sluggish at times. There's some annoyances, sure, like having to reselect your character and costume after every single battle when playing locally, or the aforementioned lack of trophies or informative flavor text for spirits. Also, as much as I personally enjoy the rewarding experience of battling and unlocking characters, when you have a large competitive following and more than 40 playable fighters, let alone more than double that, it's probably a good idea to have a menu code that'll automatically let players unlock everything in one go. Again, not saying it should be one or the other, just that this type of choice would have been appreciated by certain types of modern players. And finally, my last gripe is again, not super important by any means, but I do have a lot of questions regarding the newly adorned Echo Fighters and their place within the series. Clones have literally always been a staple within Smash, so them existing isn't what bothers me here. Personally, I'm more curious as to what the developer's definition of an Echo Fighter is, and why certain characters like Chrom and Dark Samus received that title, but legacy characters such as Dr. Mario and Pichu did not. To me, the differences between a set of characters like Fox and Falco and Marth and Lucina are virtually the same, and yet some are echoes, while there are literally 3 versions of Link, and yet all of them are considered wholly original fighters. I suppose it might have something to do with Legacy and Final Smashes maybe, but I don't know, it still seems weird to me, and I'm also kind of surprised we didn't see more of these kinds of fighters, given how they seem to be much easier to program due to their origins. Like, when I saw Daisy and Ken, I was convinced we'd be getting echoes like Proto Man, Shadow, and my personal most wanted fighter, Dixie Kong, to push this roster to its absolute limit. But unless we get an Echoes only DLC package down the road, it seems like Sakurai and his team are perfectly content with the current crop of clones. And I guess I sort of feel like it's the one last area that the development team hasn't completely taken advantage of yet. So yeah, when it comes to cons, Ultimate is mostly full of what could have beens rather than outright game-ruining problems. I guess you could argue that, as I touched on in the story section, Sakurai has a tendency to cut stuff as the series continues moving forward, and so not seeing staples like Break the Targets or Master Orders does feel like a bit of a step back. But personally, Ultimate is already stuffed so full of content that I doubt I'd even play those modes if they ended up being included anyways. And so, with all of that out of the way, it's time to take on both the darkness and the light as we make one final stand together in the verdict. Final verdict. Well, if it isn't obvious by now, I absolutely adore this game, and would easily rank it as my favorite installment in my personal favorite series. That doesn't make it my favorite video game of all time, although if I had to choose, I wouldn't be surprised if it successfully cracked the top 5. It's just so stuffed full of content right out of the gate, and somehow feels blatantly nostalgic while still achieving mass success as a modern fighting game staple. The story mode is better than I ever imagined, the roster and library of music is objectively the greatest ever assembled, and the combat is so fun and balanced that I'm still booting up my Switch once in a while to this day to see if I've got what it takes to beat my friends and strangers alike.
Add in the fact that it still hasn't reached its final and hopefully best incarnation yet, and you have one of the few titles that I feel has earned every dollar I've spent on not just the game itself, but the continued enjoyment I've received through its mind-blowing DLC offerings. On the other hand, whenever I can't test my mettle locally, the online often leaves me disappointed, and although World of Light certainly accomplishes what it sets out to do, I rarely find myself wanting to explore it again. Couple these problems with a few baffling interface issues like the constant need to reselect your fighter and lack of ability to mass unlock the roster for competitive needs, and there are certainly elements that could have been refined to make for a better user experience. And so, after taking all of this into consideration, I'm left awarding Super Smash Bros. Ultimate with an A. The game is a flawed masterpiece that respects and celebrates each and every iteration of gaming history, and I implore you to purchase it immediately if you own a Switch and haven't done so already. It's fun, fast-paced, a testament to the power of video games, and in my opinion, a fulfilled promise to an old friend who would have loved and appreciated every detail and sleepless night that Sakurai and his team crammed into this minuscule cartridge. Super Smash Bros. Ultimate is exactly what its name implies, and eventually when its development has commenced and the hype train has reached its final stop, I imagine it'll leave a legacy that every gamer will look back on with boundless enthusiasm.
Well, there you have it, my in-depth review of Super Smash Bros. Ultimate for the Nintendo Switch, and it's crazy to think that this game still isn't even done yet. Although I can't help but think that I might have forgotten something. Oh yeah, Amiibo. These little guys came out with the Wii U game and apparently are still going strong today. Along with Smash 4, it was these toy-to-life figures that really brought my channel early success, and to be honest, I've been feeling very nostalgic for them, and I'm curious as to what's been happening with them and where they're going next. So next time on the channel, we're going to do an Amiibo retrospective, and we're going from Wave 1 all the way up till modern day, so you're not going to want to miss that. But that'll do it for this video, and if there's any other games out there you want me to take a look at and review in depth, please let me know in the comment section below. I'm open to a lot, although obviously Nintendo is sort of my specialty. Thanks again to Raid Shadow Legends for sponsoring this video, and I guess all that's left to say is hit the subscribe and bell buttons if you haven't done so already for notifications, hit the like button because it helps the channel a lot, and as I always say, happy hunting baby rhinos. Peace.
As always, I want to thank my sponsors for being so supportive of this channel. And I also want to give a shout out to Roy, Barley, Sonic Chow, San, Logan, Bagel God, Danilo, McLovin, and everyone else who helped me get footage. This video was a massive collaboration, and you all kicked my butt. I'll see you guys in the next video.